We are in Parashat Chayei Sarah. That the Parasha is actually not even talking about Sara. The name of the Parasha is called The Life of Sara, but the Parasha starts with her death. Usually the story or the topic that the Parasha starts with is kind of covering the main message of the weekly portion. And even though in many cases, even like in this parasha, it starts with one story and goes to a completely different story, but nevertheless, the Torah starts with a certain topic, then that's, one can say, the main message of the parasha. And for that, we're going to concentrate today on a very big, unanswered and not clear question, is why the beginning of the parasha is dealing with the importance of the burial of Sara and going into length about it. And why is the Torah so particular about the burial? If you're looking at the different cultures around the world, the burial is not always the main thing in the death. Many cultures, they burn the body, cremate the body, do all sorts of things. But for some reason, the Torah gives a lot of honor and respect to the body and to the way of the burial, to a point that in this week's parasha, our first matriarch that makes a huge mark in the world is talked about the entire encounter of the burial of Sara. So before we start, and by the way, we're not going to be talking necessarily about sad stories of burials and death. It's going to be much more profound and much more deeper, that the message is more stronger than talking about necessarily about a person's death. But before we start, first I want to dedicate the class for a few special names. First one is for the Atzlacha and the protection. Atzlacha is the safetyness and the success of Chaya, Liora Bat Devora Gita. And also Leilui Nishmat, for the elevation of the soul of Ephraim Tzvi ben Zion. And for the entire family should have a Yeshua, salvation and refuah and health. And also Leilui Nishmat Anna Yulia Bat Yitale, also should have Aliyat Neshama, which is very appropriate to the topic of the class that we're going to learn. For the elevation of the soul, we constantly dedicate classes and many other actions to the elevation of the soul. But nobody ever says for the remaining of the body, for the holiness of the body. And so it's very appropriate that we'll talk about why the Torah is so particular about the body. But the names that we mentioned, including everybody else, should have whoever's not in this world should have aliyat neshama, an elevation for the soul, and whoever's in this world should have a refuah shlema, good health, strong health, and salvation, hell, and everything should be positive. But before we start, I'm going to share with you a story like most of the classes that's kind of set the tone for the class. And in the beginning, when I thought of talking about this topic, I was like, okay, it's not such an exciting topic. No, nobody wants to hear about death. Unfortunately, last week we went to a funeral of a dear friend that died very, very young. I don't like when people say before their time, because that was the time. But nevertheless, it was very sad to see a young man in his 40s dying. We went to the funeral, and as we're going out, my wife and me, my wife is asking me, should we buy a burial lot? And I was like, I'm not planning on dying. And she was like, yeah, but eventually things happen. And would you want to be buried next to me? Like, what's the plan here? I said, there's no plan. I'm not planning on dying. But nevertheless, that's something to think about, and let's discuss it over dinner. But the fact is that, unfortunately, if Mashiach is not going to come anytime soon, many of us will be dealing with the situation. But let's hope Mashiach is going to come very soon. The status of us will change. But we still need to approach to talk about this topic, but nevertheless, it's much more deeper than you think. I want you to have interest in the class because the message is very profound. So to set the tone of the class, there's a story, and I'm going to try to say it as short as possible because the stories make the class long. There was a certain young man, and I might be ruining the story, by the way, but the message is what's important. A young man in the Holocaust, the family were running away from the Nazis, Yimach Shimam, and what happened is that the parents, and here is where I might be ruining the story, the details, they took one of the kids and they put it in a family, a Christian family, and they hid the kids in the family, and of course ran away, and nobody knows what was the result of the family. But the kid grew up in this Christian house. And another detail that I might not be getting right, at some point that child grew up, and maybe he was older. That's the details I don't know, but it's irrelevant. But what happened was that there was a certain girl there or a woman, and when the Nazis came to search for them or whatever, obviously he wasn't a young boy. What they did is they pretended like as if he's married to one of the girls, and they made a certificate that they're married. That way, when the Nazis came, they said, no, they're married. They're not. So it could be a teenager, it could be a young adult. But nevertheless, they were fake married, just to get away from the Nazis. But eventually, they kind of stayed together. And at some point, time passed by, and if I remember correctly, then again, I'm kind of butchering a little bit the story, but it's not so important. There was one child that came from the father, and one child that later on came from the mother. And obviously, the two brothers, one was Jewish because he came from a different mother, and a child that came from the new mother who was not Jewish. And time passed by. One of them, the father moved to the United States and lived his life with a non-Jewish wife, with a non-Jewish kid, and the Jewish kid ended up in Israel, in Bnei Brak. Many, many years later, the father dies, and the brother, there's one Jewish brother, lives in Bnei Brak, one not Jewish brother who lives in New York. They're brothers from the father, not from the mother. The father dies, the non-Jewish brother calls his Jewish brother and says, Dad died, and but there's also some good news. He left a very big inheritance, $50 million. Each and every one of us, we get $25 million each. He less cared about the money. He jumped on a plane, came to the burial, to the levaya, to the funeral. And unfortunately, the non-Jewish brother was very quick to make the arrangements, and he was about to bury him in a non-Jewish cemetery. So the Jewish brother says, listen, our father was Jewish. The fact that he married a non-Jewish woman, and you are not Jewish, that's one thing, but he was Jewish. And his wish would be to be buried like a Jew. Unfortunately, there was no will, there was no clear message about that. They decided to go to some arbitrary mediator. And unfortunately, the mediator took the wisdom of King Solomon and says, I have a great idea. Why don't you burn the body and you take half the ashes and bury it in the Jewish cemetery and half the ashes buried in the non-Jewish cemetery. Now the Jewish brother doesn't know what to do. He calls a great rabbi here in Israel and he says, listen, I started with a big problem by trying to fight with burying my father in a Jewish cemetery. Now I made it worse because now they want to burn him. Okay, he doesn't know what to do. So he begs the brother, the fighting. He tells the brother, listen, it's so important to me to bury my father in a Jewish burial. I'm willing to I'll give you $50,000 from my part of the Yerusha, from the inheritance. Just let me bury him in a Jewish cemetery, inheritance. Thank you. So the brother took advantage of the offer and says, I want your half. I want your $25 million. You bury your father however you want to. What do you do? He calls again the same rabbi and tells him, now I got myself in more trouble. Now it's going to cost me $25 million to bury my father in a Jewish cemetery. So the rabbi gave him a very harsh halacha decree. Yeah, you pay $25 million to bury your father. Because the halacha says that the money that the father or the mother leaves first goes to the burial expenses, and whatever's left, you can use. That's the halacha. If a father dies and he has a mortgage, first they pay the bank. If anything is left, it goes to the kids. But the halacha doesn't say mortgage. The halacha says the burial expenses. So if it's going to cost you $25 million to bury your father, then you bury your father. And just like that, $25 million went into the ground. So now comes the big question, is why the Torah is so particular and so gives so much importance about the burial, about the honor of the body. You know, you can't wait with the body. The body has to be buried right away. Some people wait for a day or two. You know, not allowed to do an autopsy. In very unique situations, maybe the halacha will approve and allow to operate on the body. And so many rituals and cleaning the body and purifying the body. And what's the big deal? And more than that, how many stories do you hear of people fighting over like this? Millions. Just don't burn the body. Bury it in a Jewish cemetery. Bury it the right way. I can tell you stories from here till tomorrow. I told you one story many years ago. I'm definitely not going to repeat it, about this guy who calls me out of nowhere from Texas with a heavy southern accent, his father. You know the story? I said it many, many times. I'll tell you another time. I don't want to take time from the class. I shared this story maybe 20 times in classes. And the father, he was Jewish. The kids didn't know he's Jewish. He got sick in his 80s. And he went to Google, typed, is there life after death? My video came up. He started looking at the videos. And he did a bar mitzvah in his 80s. A story that it was like a drama, how to bury the father. So I can testify on numerous stories how people went completely out of the way. And even I fought for certain relatives. I have a certain relative that was married to a non-Jewish wife. Well, you can't even imagine what we went through. Dvorah will tell you what wars we went with the family to make sure they don't burn the body. So what's such so important? Okay, the body. Isn't the soul what's important? The eternal part of the soul. I'm fighting over a body. The Torah gives such importance. What does it matter? Or I will say it even more disgusting. Who cares? It's a dead corpse. The honor should go to the soul, to the legacy. Or what's the big deal if it's buried in this piece of ground or in this piece of ground? Or why is the Torah give so much importance to the body? So we see in this week's parasha, Avraham Avinu, he goes through a tiring journey and unbelievable turmoil to bury his wife. And don't forget that Avraham Avinu, in our terms, was one of the richest people in the generation. A powerful, I can't say politician because there wasn't really politics there, but he was like a very powerful figure. Everybody knew Avraham Avinu. I mean, Avraham Avinu, you have to understand, it's not only that we relate with Avraham Avinu. 4 billion people in our generation look at Avraham as their forefather. Muslims and many other faiths. Avraham, his name is Avraham, is Av Hamon Goim, is a father of many nations. It's almost like you'll say now some big name. I don't want to compare anybody in our generation to Avraham Avinu, but everybody knew Avraham Avinu. He couldn't pull some strings or make some things work, and he had to go through this entire ordeal to bury his wife. Which, again, one might say, what's even the common sense here? Why did Avraham Avinu was so particular about where he's burying her, and you know how much he paid for that? So from that, one can take the approach and the question, what's so important about the body? The Torah is giving so much emphasis and importance for how the body is buried, where it's buried, and so much more details. There must be some type of hidden meaning to the importance of the body, to the meaning of the body. So I'm sure you know the famous Mishnah that says, Sara nisyonot nitnasa Avraham Avinu, 10 challenges, 10 tests Avraham Avinu had to go through. And his life was a life of challenges, from the beginning till the end. Yes, he was very successful. He was the first one who advertised the name of God in the world, and with great success. But all his life was challenge after challenge after challenge, and great challenges, not like challenges like what we have. And to many of us, we know that the 10 challenges are pretty specified in the parashot, that the first one, of course, was Lech Lecha. You have to leave your birthplace. You have to leave your hometown. It's almost like somebody now is a multimillionaire in some metropolitan. Everybody knows him. Everybody honors him. He has businesses everywhere, and suddenly a godly voice tells him, leave everything and just get up and go to the other side of the world. So that in itself was the first nisayon. That's what the commentary says. That was the first test. Lech lecha. Just get up and leave. Leave your status. Leave the honor that you have in the place where you live. And so forth. And of course, the last nisayon, what we read last week, is go and sacrifice your child. What kind of a nisayon is that? I don't have a child for 100 years. Now God is telling me, go and sacrifice him. So these are and in between, many other challenges and tests. And needless to say that when you read about the life of Avraham Avinu, he's one of the characters that says most about him in the Torah. By the way, we don't know many information about other great leaders and figures in the Torah. But Avraham Avinu, there's a lot of stories about him in the Torah. I'm not talking about now Midrashim and Gemarot and so forth. But nevertheless, one of the major things that we can learn from Avraham Avinu is all the challenges that he went through. If I compare my challenges to his challenges, my challenge is like a walk in the park. How can I complain about anything? But nevertheless, Rabbeinu Yonah comes with a different approach and says, no, the sacrifice, the Akedah of Yitzchak is not the 10th challenge, not the 10th test, the 9th. The 10th test is the burial of Sara. That he had to face the challenge and how am I burying her? Face Bnei Chet and Ephron, and that's the approach of Rabbeinu Yonah. He says, no, test number 1 is Lech Lecha, leave your place of birth. Test number 9 is go sacrifice your kid. And the 10th one is the challenge of burying your wife. And why is that a challenge? Why is that a test? Because Avraham Avinu, and again, I don't want to compare him to any figure in our generation, but Avraham Avinu was in a level of what we can relate with as a president. And again, chas v'shalom, not to compare to enemies, it's like you say now Putin, Trump, like a figure that, everybody knows Avraham Avinu. He can snap his finger and get anything done. He wasn't some farmer or a shepherd like we think, walking with a cane and 2 sheep. He was the most richest man in the world, the most powerful man. Nobody wanted to deal with him. Was able to conquer anything that he did, destroyed armies. So he has a problem with saying one word and something happens. So for him to go and bow down to Bnei Chet and Ephron and to humiliate and to kind of go like, as they say, with his tail between his legs, that's a test. Even though he was a humble man, but you would think that a powerful man like him will be like, I need to bow down to you. I need to buy something from you. I don't need to do anything to you. This is where I want to bury my wife and give me the piece of land. You would think. But nevertheless, he goes and, not physically, but he bows down to Ephron ibn Chet and he, excuse my language, he kisses his tuches. What are you doing? So according to Rabbeinu Yonah, that was the last challenge of Avraham Avinu. Now comes a powerful part, is that the Torah dedicates 18 verses for this entire business deal. Nothing in the Torah gets such a focus on. You know that the 10 Commandments 10 commandments are only 14 verses. The foundation of the entire world is said in the Torah in 14 verses. And the negotiation of Avraham Avinu and Ephron to bury Sara is 18 verses. Why? What? So 18 verses from the Torah is for a business deal. It's a purchase of a real estate. Just come and say Avraham wanted to bury Sara and he bought the plot for a lot of money. That's it. Now when you see something like this in the Torah, you must say something's more than beats the eye. A dialogue with Bnei Chet, and then with the Ephron, and I'll give you this, don't give you this, don't give that. So when you see such an obvious statement in the Torah, you're saying, okay, there must be something more deeper here. So what's going on in this dialogue? First of all, Avraham Avinu, the Midrash says that there was like 3 stages. First of all, Avraham Avinu comes to Bnei Chet. Now it doesn't say who's Bnei Chet. If you translate it, it's the children of Chet. But apparently the Bnei Chet was some type of a committee. Like you have a city, there's a municipality, there's the city hall. They were like the committee that deals with the land. It wasn't like some people. Okay, it says Bnei Chet, the sons of Chet. But they weren't like individuals. He obviously went to, when you live in a certain city, I don't know how it is in other countries. In Israel, you live in Tzfat, you get buried in Tzfat. The municipality gives you a place to be buried, unless you want to buy a certain land. But nevertheless, he goes to Bnei Chet, he goes to this board, and he tells them, I want a piece of land. And he says clearly, for free. I'm not going to buy anything. But if you're reading the words very carefully, you have to say that he's asking for achuzat kever. Achuzat kever means I want a land. Achuzah means an estate. He's not saying I want a little 6 by 6. I want a little grave. He says I want a land, shetach. I want to make a bet kvarot, a cemetery. Something big. With a big tziyun over there. There'll be hilulot over there. Well, it's going to be there for years. We're going to have parties over there. I need a whole land. Achuzat kever. And what is he basing on? He says, I live here. It's not that I'm coming from out of town. Some people live in New York. They come and bury their loved one in Yerushalayim. He says, I live here. I pay my arnona, my local taxes. They tell him, no. Of course, everything in a nice way, very diplomatic. They don't just kick him out of the room. They just tell him in a very nice way. After all, it's Avraham Avinu. Nobody wants to mess with him. But they say in a very indirect and then in a direct way, no, bury her in our cemetery. What, our cemetery is not good enough for you? We'll give you any plot you want. You can have that one, you can have that one. Bury her here. He says, no. I need to speak to a higher authority. Bring me the mayor. Bring me Ephron. You're just a basic committee. You just work for the municipality. I want to speak with Ben Tzochar, the Ephron. He's like the kind of the mayor here, the governor. Maybe a governor is more appropriate, but nevertheless, I want to talk to him. This time, he already offers money. And he says, I want to buy a piece of land. So, of course, Ephron is a very diplomatic politician, and he tells him, buy, shmai, take it. I'll give it to you as a present. But he repeats the word present 3 times. In Hebrew, it's matana. And he tells him, kach matana, a present, matana, matana. Why are you repeating it 3 times? Because he wanted to kind of like when, people go on a date, and they serve the bill, and you take no, I'll pay. No, I'll pay. No, I'll pay. No, I will pay. Of course, one wants you pay. The people who argue on the bill. No, I want to pay. So when he tells him 3 times, take it as a present, he's leading him to say, no, I'm Avraham Avinu. I don't want presents. I'm going to pay money. He was tricking Avraham Avinu to take from him I'm going to take a present. I'm a billionaire. I can buy the whole land. No, I'm paying. So Ephron then comes and sticks it to him and tells him, oh, if this is the case, then the price is 400 shekel. 400 shekel? Are you out of your mind? It's kind of like $100 million in our generation. Give or take. Now, how do you know that it's so much money? A lot of people say, how do you know it's 100 million? I just threw an amount because 100 million is something exaggerated. But where do you see, how do we know it's such a large amount? Because when Yaakov Avinu goes out of Haran, we're going to read this in a few weeks, he goes out as a multimillionaire, not like his grandfather Avraham Avinu. This time Yaakov Avinu is a billionaire, a gazillionaire. He goes out of Haran with wives, with kids, millions of sheep and cattle. We're talking about millions here. When he goes out of Haran, he's approaching the land of Israel, Canaan, and he goes and buys a ranch to put his cattle. And when he goes and buys the land, and just imagine, if he has millions of sheep and cattle, millions, you need hundreds and hundreds of acres of land, right? You're not going to buy like a little small area. Then it says in the Torah that he bought a huge land for the amount of 100 ksita. Okay? The ksita is a currency. That's how much the land cost him. The Gemara says, what is the worth of 100 ksita? Like you will say, dollars, yen, whatever. 100 ksita is worth 4 shekels. And Avraham Avinu paid 400 shekels. 100 times more than what Yaakov Avinu bought a ranch that was probably on hundreds of acres. So let's say you go now to some land in America, you go into Texas, you buy 100 acres, 500 acres. How much is it going to cost you? A few $1,000s, a few tens of thousands, a few hundreds of thousands. So Avraham Avinu buys a little piece of land for 400 shekels. So I'm saying it's roughly something in our generation, 100 million, 200 million, 50 million. It's not 2 million. It's something exaggerated. It's almost like you'll come, and people do that here in Israel, because Israel doesn't have a lot of land. Some people, they just throw to your prices. We came to buy once before we bought this building. We went somewhere, and the guy he told me, the realtor told me that he wants 16 million. Then when I came there, he told me, no, I reduced the price because it's exaggerated. I want 13 million. I was like, okay, 13 million is reasonable. And then later on, after we talking for an hour, he's telling me dollars. I said, I thought you were talking about 13 million shekels, dollars? And that's when the dollar was 3.8. So I told him, you want 50 million shekels? This is a property that's worth maybe 5 million. If you're saying 13 million, 50 million? He said, well, that's my price. And what does he tell me? Madonna wanted to buy it. Because Madonna wanted to buy a house here in Tzfat. And she can throw 50 million in a blink of an eye. But they didn't let her buy here, by the way. She bought a property in Rosh Pina. But nevertheless, people have their own price, and if there's a buyer and has the money, you pay. And in many cases, people will throw to you an exorbitant amount. So Ephron, with all of his chutzpah, tells Avraham Avinu, we're friends. What's money between friends? Please write it to Ephron. 400 shekel? Basically, Ephron cheated him, and Avraham Avinu was willing to pay, like the story I told you, $25 million for a burial. Avraham Avinu paid 400 shekels, and again, that can be easily 50 million, 100 million, 200 million, an exorbitant amount. And the joke here is how Ephron is like, how he says, 400 shekel beni uvencha mahu, like it's friends. Yeah. Interestingly here, if you looking at the text, and you have to look at the text, you can't learn the Torah, I told you many times, in English or in any other language, because in the text Every time it says the word Ephron in Hebrew, it's written with a Vav, right? Ayin, Pei, Reish, Vav, Nun. Ephron. The only time when it's talking about the money, it's without a Vav. With what's called the Cholam Chaser, the dot that's on the top. You don't see a Vav. Why no Vav? Because the numerical value of Ephron without a Vav is 400. And more interesting is that the numerical value of 400 equals to the term Ayin Ra. Ayin Ra is like not an evil eye, that's Ayin Hara. Ayin Ra is a person without a heart, like a negative eye it's really talking about a greedy individual. Ayin Ra is that I look at something that doesn't belong to me. Ayin Hara, that's the evil eye, that's a whole different thing. But Ayin Ra is that I look at something and I greed, I want, and it doesn't even belong to me. It's a greedy, tricky, evil individual. So, the Midrash says, here is, you see, like the real Anava, the humility, the humbleness of Avraham Avinu. Because, he could have confronted Ephron and tell him, listen, buddy, just move away and give me the piece of land. I don't want trouble, but if I need to, I'll take the land. That's not the approach of Avraham Avinu. He's not from the Gambino family. It's Avraham Avinu. But nevertheless, the Midrash says, Avraham Avinu could have complained to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Didn't you say to me, Mr. Master of the universe, that this land is mine? Le'orka ve'le'rochba, its length and its width, isn't it for me? Avraham Avinu can come in a question to the Master of the universe, says, you gave the land to me, the whole land is mine. I need to buy a little piece? The Midrash says that's where you see how humble Avraham Avinu was. He didn't even complain to Hashem. He could have said, listen, you just sent me to slaughter my son. Because of that, my wife died. Because the Midrash says that Sara heard that her son was about to be slaughtered and she died. Of course, the Zohar says she didn't die from sorrow. She actually understood. She completed her task. She fulfilled her mission in the world. But Avraham Avinu could have complained to the Master of the universe. What are you doing? I need to negotiate now with this fraud. I have to pay so much money. And just between us, the 400 shekels was nothing for Avraham Avinu. In our terminology, he would be worth $500 billion in our term. So 400 shekels, really it's small money. But that's not the issue. The fact is that Avraham Avinu took it in a humble way, didn't complain, didn't fight, did the transaction. And you can now ask yourself, for what? For a piece of land? Why can't you bury her there or buy a different land? Why there? Okay, so we know that where Ma'arat HaMachpelah is where Adam HaRishon was created. Adam and Chava buried there. Then Avraham and Sara was buried there. Yitzchak and Rivka, Yaakov and Leah. So, okay, we're not taking away from the holiness of the place. Avraham Avinu knew exactly why he's buying specifically this land. But for us, we remain with the question, what's so particular? You couldn't negotiate from 400 to 350 to 300? Or use some political powers? What we want to take from that is the question is what's so important that the Torah is taking so much time to emphasize the importance of the burial. So I told you that the name of Ephron, who's the individual who negotiated with Avraham Avinu, when he talked about the money, there's no Vav for the numerical value of 400. Interestingly, there's a commentary by the Kli Yakar that says any time in the Torah that you will find the increment or the number 400, it's talking about tzarut ayn, envy and jealousy. And not only in the Torah, in the entire Tanakh. You'll find the word, not a word, the number 400, know that there's some type of jealousy there. Now interestingly, the Kli Yakar says kin'ah v'tzarut ayn. So kin'ah is jealousy and tzarut ayn is envy. Now one might ask, what's the difference? There's a huge difference between jealousy and envy. Jealousy is that I want what you have. Envy is that, why do you have it? I have more than you, but why do you have that? If I'm poor and you're driving a Mercedes, I'm jealous of you that you have a nice car. I want a nice car. I don't have an issue with you. I have an issue that I don't have the car. I can be a billionaire. But if you got a more attractive wife and I can have any wife in the world, I'm envying you. Why did he get such a nice wife? Why did he has the penthouse and I only have the duplex? You're more richer than him. You're more successful than him. But you want what he has. That's envy. That's tzarut ayin. So the Kli Yakar says, anytime you'll find the number 400 in the Tanakh, know that there's something with jealousy and envy. Where do we see it? Very obvious. We're not going to go to all the times. But the brothers of Yosef were very, very jealous of him. They were actually more envy than jealous because they had everything too. There was nothing to be jealous of him or envy. But nevertheless, kinu'ulo. They sold him. As a result, he went down to Mitzrayim. What was the result? That we went down to Mitzrayim for 400 years. Esav and Yaakov. In a few weeks, we're going to learn that Yaakov is coming out of Haran. How many men is Esav coming, approaching him? 400 men. Later on in the Tanakh, with Naval Carmeli, David HaMelech worked for a certain individual, and he didn't want to pay him. David HaMelech comes to him with 400 men. Every time you will find the 400, the Kli Yakar says, look between the lines, you'll find jealousy or some type of envy. That I'm just saying as a side note, because obviously there was some type of envy or some type of jealousy or something going on between Ephron, who says, why should I give you the land? I'm gonna squeeze it out of you. Therefore, the Rabbi Yonah says that was a nisayon. It was a test of Avraham Avinu. So it all brings us again to the same question. Well, what's so important about the kvura, about the burial? That the Torah goes to the extra length to tell us about the importance of burial. And there's a big question in the Talmud, why do you bury? I mean, there's many other ways you can dispose the body, get rid of the body, and so forth. Which really, when you're thinking about it, if you go now to any major city, you'll see a cemetery. And it looks like they're like one on top of the other. To a point that in some cemeteries they're talking about doing levels, they're talking about so many different things. But where, let's say in our generation, there are millions and millions of graves everywhere in the world. Where are all the graves going back 3,000 years? What have they sunk in the ground and there's more graves now? Can you imagine how many graves are everywhere? Sometimes they're digging a piece of real estate, they're finding graves, but there should be billions of graves from every generation. So interestingly, the approach of the Gemara, when it's questioned, why do you bury a body? Then one might say, oh, it's a farewell or some type of separation from the body. The Gemara says, no, this is not a preda me'aguf. It's not saying goodbye to the body. Rather, it's ela zri'ah shel aguf. It's sewing. S-O-W, not sewing a button. Why is that sewing? Because in Tchiyat HaMetim, in the resurrection of the dead, which is a fundamental belief in the Torah, the body will be resurrected, the body will have growth as a result from the sowing when you buried it. Why is it so bad in Judaism to cremate? Because there's not going to be a body to be resurrected. Can you imagine the sorrow for the soul? That there's no body to be resurrected in? Okay, so maybe many different cultures and faiths will say, we don't believe in resurrection of the dead. Since the Torah says, if you don't believe in it, you're not worthy of it. Jew or non-Jew, it's irrelevant right now. But if the Torah says, if you don't believe in the resurrection of the dead, whether you're a Jew or non-Jew, then you're not worthy of it, so you're not going to be part of it. But nevertheless, the approach of the Torah, of the Gemara, we're not saying goodbye to the body. Rather, I'm planting it in the ground. I'm sowing it. That from that will be growth at the time of the resurrection of the dead. And like I told you, many faiths, they believe the right thing is to burn the body. Why do we believe that burning is the worst thing to do? Because when you put the body in the ground, I don't want to compare it to compost, but how do you do manure? How do you fertilize land? It's with either with the excrement of animals or remaining body parts. When you put the body in the ground, the elements don't disappear. They stay there. When you burn the body, you burn all the elements. Nothing is left. You burn the material. Therefore, the body ceases to exist. I know you can argue and say, but when you bury, it decomposes. Yeah, it decomposes, but it becomes united with the ground. It becomes united with the earth. It goes back to its element. The burial is so important because it's preserving the body for the resurrection of the dead. If you don't believe in the resurrection, I'm sorry to tell you, you won't be resurrected. That's how it works. But the burial is so important, I'm repeating myself, because that is preserving the body for the resurrection. But comes now a big question. Why do we need to be resurrected? Why is that so... doesn't sound so... resurrected. So now is not the time to explain the topic and the concept of the resurrection of the dead, but the body participated in this world in observing the Torah and the mitzvot, and it needs to be rewarded. And in the resurrection of the dead, the body is being rewarded for what it did in this world. More than that, we just read a few weeks ago that Adam HaRishon, when he was created before the sin, he saw God. He saw godliness everywhere. Gan Eden. But of course that was removed because of the sin. So he went down to a much lower level and to a point that you can't see any Kedusha. At the time of the resurrection of the dead, the body will enjoy a spiritual experience. Can you imagine? You can't imagine. Don't tell me you can imagine, because no human can imagine. Do you feel anything when you do something spiritual? You don't. Okay, maybe you feel excited or happy or connected to the master of the universe. But can you imagine what it means that the body experiences godliness? It's a pleasure that we can't even imagine. Doesn't exist such a pleasure in this world. Doesn't matter with what substance or action you're going to do. We don't have a way to relate with such pleasure. That's why if one says, I don't want to be at the time of resurrection of the dead, well, you're missing the peak of the creation. That's the time when the body will be experiencing unbelievable pleasure from seeing, understanding, and experiencing God. So we're not going to necessarily focus now on why do you need to bring the body back. I'm going to say it in a short way, because that is the ultimate present we can experience, is a godly revelation in a human body, in a physical body. Before I explain to you what's so profound about the message about the burial, I want to tell you a story, and I'm sure you even heard it, and if you didn't hear it, you can go to YouTube and hear it from the person himself. But there's a story from a rabbi from New Jersey. His name is Stephen Amon. Stephen Amon. Okay? He's a rabbi in Deal, New Jersey. And here you go to YouTube, you'll find the video. And he's a rabbi in Deal, New Jersey, and his wife's mother has a yahrzeit on Rosh Hashanah, Erev Rosh Hashanah. And needless to say, and the burial, the grave is in Staten Island. For the ones of you who know the Eastern Seaboard, going from Staten Island to Deal, New Jersey can take you at least 2 hours minimum. If you get stuck in the tunnel, you get stuck on the bridge, that's not a pleasant drive. Especially on Erev Rosh Hashanah. So one time, it was around August. I'm telling you the story because I know many will be lazy to go to YouTube and hear the actual story from himself. And he says it with all the details. I'm going to tell you a little bit of the story. His name is Rabbi Stephen Amon. Amon. And anyways, one time, it was August, they were traveling. And his wife told him, listen, you know, it's very stressful for me to go to the grave on Erev Rosh Hashanah. We're here. We're passing Staten Island to go to New Jersey. Let's go now to the grave. We'll do the prayers there. We'll read the Tehillim, do what we need to do, and save me the job. Okay, so they stop there. Needless to say, everything is empty, nobody there. They go to the grave, they read the Tehillim, say what they need to say. And in the background, they see a little funeral. And I don't know if you participated in a funeral in America. They come with like this tractor. The coffin is carried with a tractor. Very rarely it will be carried by hand because the graveyards, they are so big. You need like a little tractor to carry it. Nevertheless, excuse me, they hear the sound. They see the tractor putting the coffin in the ground, going out. The people there go like that and they leave. So the rabbi says, what are you doing? You have to bury the coffin. No, let the guy do that. The guy? He can't do that. You can't, this is the biggest bizayon, the disgrace to the money. You can't do such a thing. They said, no, it's fine. Let the guy from the cemetery take care of it. He couldn't take such a thing, seeing a coffin. Takes off his jacket in the middle of August in New York. It's kind of equivalent to August in Israel. And for an hour and a half, he buries the coffin by himself or maybe with another person. I saw the story a long time ago. Maybe I'm butchering the story a little bit. But for an hour and a half, he buries the coffin the right way. And now is not the time to explain to you how important it is that every little part of the burial, I had the exact same experience with my great aunt that they wanted the people from the cemetery to bury her. Me and my 3-year-old and my 5-year-old, Erev Shabbat, were burying by myself. I told Julio there, please don't touch anything. Anyway, so he buries the coffin, and later on, he out of curiosity, he wants to know who's the person, right? So he looks at the name. He starts making some phone calls because if he's buried in Staten Island, it must be that he's from the area. He calls all sorts of rabbis. Do you know so-and-so? You know so-and-so? Nobody knows who the person is. He just wanted to know who he buried. Okay, so he calls a friend of him, a Rosh Yeshiva in some yeshiva in Baltimore, big yeshiva. And then he tells him, do you know so-and-so? The Rosh Yeshiva says, do I know him? How do you not know him? I don't know him. So the story goes, and again, I'm telling you the short version of the story, that he was, I think, from Seattle or Canada. His father sent him, I'm talking about Rabbi Stephen, to a yeshiva, whether it was Baltimore or whatever it was, and gave, it was $2,000 tuition per month. After 2 months, the father calls the head of the yeshiva and says, listen, I'm going bankrupt, I don't have money, I can't pay. You have to cancel the tuition. I can't pay it. So the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the yeshiva, says, I'm going to tell now your son that there's no tuition. You have to leave the yeshiva. And the father says, I don't know how to tell my son either. So the Rosh Yeshiva says, don't do anything. Let me try to figure it out. The Rosh Yeshiva calls a few people that he knows. Is there anybody who can sponsor this yeshiva student? It's $2,000 a month. And he finds a certain individual to sponsor the tuition of this child's yeshiva for 3 years. I'm getting chills. And who's the person that he just buried? The person who sponsored 3 years of his yeshiva as a yeshiva bacher from 14 to 17. And that's how Hashem repaid him. Years later, he sponsored this boy Torah for 3 years. This boy became a man and buried him and gave him a proper burial. Go listen to the video online. It's much more exciting than what I told you the story. You see how Hashem repay a man goes out of his way to sponsor a child. You know what's $2,000 a month, even if you're rich? A child that is not even yours. 3 years. And the Rosh Yeshiva says, you don't know who the man is? He sponsored your yeshiva studies. And you see how Hashem repays midah keneged midah, measure for measure. I can tell you on the exact same idea, I had the exact same thing with my great aunt. And now I definitely don't want to sidetrack from the story, from our topic, but my great aunt, I shared that many times, that before I got married and in between my near death and my becoming religious, I was in jail. I was jailed for many different things. And I was facing 40 years in jail. Okay, I had 43 counts on my indictment. They thought I'm a terrorist. They thought it was right after 9/11. I shared the story a few times. Now I'm not going to get into it. It's very long. But I was sitting in jail for a year and a half with no bail, with no way to go out, rotting in jail, facing 40 years indictment in a federal prison. And my great aunt, somehow they approved bail after a year and a half, $1.7 million bail. 3 people had to come with deeds to their house. And my great aunt stepped forward, gave her house. Her and 2 of the sons signed for my bail. I had to live in her basement. She basically got me out of jail, okay? And needless to say, the story ends in a very miraculous way. During that time, I met Dvorah, I met my wife, we got married. Dvorah married me while I have an indictment of 40 years in jail. We got married in December, my trial was in January. Of course, I told you the story. Dvorah says, I don't believe it's going to happen. My rabbi told me, don't worry, it's all nisayon. Miraculous story. I have it online if you want to listen to it. I went out of this case with a $1,000 fine and a year probation. 127 people were arrested in the whole thing. 2 got out of the story with nothing. Me and my good friend Itzik, both of us who made tshuva, came out of it with nothing. Some of my friends are still sitting in jail, by the way, for this whole thing. And I gave the whole story online once. I shared it. At the right time, everything will come out with all the information. But the point is, this is when I share my near-death experience story, when I started sharing it, when I first met my wife, Dvorah would go with me on lectures, and she would always tell me, you're saying the wrong miracle. The miracle is not how you came from the world above to this world. The miracle is how you got out of jail, how you got out of that whole thing. That is the real miracle. That's where you see Hashem's hand in the world and can do whatever He wants, however He wants. I'm telling you, it was not normal. I'm not sharing the story right now. But why am I telling you that? Because my great aunt, you know what it means to come and give the deeds to your house and sign? After, of course, I got out, everything cleared out, became observant, got married. So this great aunt would come to us every Friday for meals, for all the high holidays. And when she died a few years later, her son wanted to burn her. If you would know what wars we had to go to not have her burnt, cremated, of course, I'm talking about, you can't even imagine what Dvorah and me had to go through. And then not only that, we buried her Erev Shabbat. I'm telling you, we didn't have... same story like Rabbi Stephen. And as I'm burying her, by myself, there was nobody there. My 3-year-old, Yosef was 3 years old at the time. Up until today we laugh because he looked how we put down the coffin in the grave. You know what it means to put a coffin by yourself in a grave? He kept asking me, how is she going out of the box? That's the mind of a 3-year-old. But nevertheless, you can't even imagine what we had to go through. But she got a proper burial. And I said Kaddish for her for the whole year. And many other things. And it kept ringing in my mind. You know, in Hebrew we say, Adam koneh et olamo berega. A person by his eternity with one action. One action that she did, she gained her eternity. Can you imagine her Gan Eden that my defense attorneys are saying because of her, he's out, or because of him, her, she got a proper burial, and I'm not taking any credit. But I can't even start telling you what we had to go through. First of all, not to get her cremated. Her son wanted to cremate. You know what? I'll tell you even before that. She got a stroke. Fell down. Nobody was in the house. Got another stroke. She was literally in the hospital, almost dead. The same son, and I don't want to talk too much because chas v'shalom should not be lashon hara about him. He came to the hospital. And the doctor's telling me, okay, the son ordered us to pull the plug. No plugs, no nothing. You can't even imagine what we had to go through in the hospital. I'm a how do you call it? I'm a great nephew. And the son signed, no, take her off the machines. And another world war to get her to happen. And you know what happened after a few days? She woke up and lived another 7 months. A little bit paralyzed in the face from the stroke. But her son wanted to pull the plug off, and you can't. And again, same thing, what wars Dvor and me had to go to in the hospital to keep her alive. So you see sometimes with one little action how it pays off at some point. But again, we're drifting from our topic. But going back to the story with Rabbi Stephen, and the story that I told you, how a person does a certain act, how Hashem repays them with what? With their burial. He could have repaid my great aunt with great wealth, with a long life, even though she did have a long life. Not as long as one would wish. She died in her early 80s. But nevertheless, Hashem could reward her with many things, but decided to reward her with the right burial. Because we were going against all odds, not to bypass the cremation and the burial. So the same thing with the story with Rabbi Stephen, and again we're left with the same question. So what's the whole thing with the burial? Why is the Torah so particular with the burial? So I'll take you many parashot down the line to Parashat Chayei, the book of Dvarim, chapter 40, Chaf Aleph, 21, verse Kaf Gimel, 23. And it says, Kilelat Elohim Talui. Translation, for a hanging corpse is blasphemy of God. In Parashat Chayei, it's talking about a person, a missionary, that not only that practices idolatry, that goes and causes other people to rebel against Hashem and to practice idolatry against Hashem. Okay? That's called a mesit. I think the appropriate translation in our generation will be like a missionary, that you want to be an idolater? Be an idolater. Why are you going to other people and convincing them there's no God? Or to serve other gods? So the Torah says, you know what should be done to him? First he needs to be stoned, and after he's stoned, he needs to be hung on the tree. Okay? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I am wrong, but I think in Christianity, after they crucify somebody, they left it there to rot on the cross. And correct me if I'm wrong. That's what I know. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, take him off the tree by the end of the day and give him a proper burial. Excuse me? That person dedicated his life to rebel against you, goes and convinces other people to rebel against you, and you say, get him off the tree and give him a proper burial? What? God says it's an embarrassment for me when you see the corpse hanging there. I'm embarrassed. Forget about that. He's a mesit, goes against me. But it's embarrassing to me. Hashem says the body is created in my image. It's not appropriate for the body to be hung there and rot and the birds to eat pieces of the body. It's embarrassing. It's not appropriate. Saying in other words, the body is the messenger that does the dirty work to bring the dwelling of Hashem in this world. If you work in a farm, I worked in a farm. I told you I was in a boarding school. We had to work as that was the part of the system. We worked in, it was a farm. We had to work there. Part of the work, you have to work with the cows. So you have to take a very big shovel and pick up the excrement of the cows. And it's not like a little dog. It's cows. And 4 o'clock in the morning, and you're in the excrement, and you have to clean it. Okay, later on you take a shower. But the shovel is the one who picks up the excrement. Ugh. But it does the job. You're not going to do it with your hand. So the body is the tool that does the dirty work. But what's the dirty work? I mean, I'm saying dirty work, but the body is the tool that brings Hashem's presence into the world. Lehashkin et Hashem ba'olam. I'm sure you heard the word Shechina, right? Shechina, the translation is the feminine aspect of the divine. But the Shechina comes from the word lishkon, dwelling, is when Hashem dwells in this world. How is that possible? The body is what does that. The body is the representative and the body is the messenger. The soul can't do anything here. The body does it. If you do not bury the body, or chas v'shalom, cremate it, burn it, whatever it is that many cultures do, it's not a disgrace to the body. It's a disgrace to the essence of life. It's like as if there's no value to your life. No value to anything holy. It's a piece of body. Like as if there's no importance to the person's life. A garbage bag. That's what it is. No honor, no respect, no nothing to the person's life. You take up the garbage every day. You don't bury your garbage. You take it out, you throw it. Why? It's garbage. When you bury something, it shows that whatever the object was has importance, has value. Why does it have importance and value? Because it's holy. Newspapers you throw into the garbage or to the recycling. But a mezuzah or a tefillin or a parchment or even pieces of the siddur, why do you don't throw it to the garbage? You bury it. Right? How they say in Ashkenaz, Shmeis, Shemes, Shames, Gniza. You don't know to do that. But why? Because it's a holy object. It's a disgrace to the value of it, to the concept, not to the piece of paper, to the parchment. Saying in other words, not only the soul is holy. We know the soul is holy, right? Shamash natata bitorah. You gave me a holy soul, a pure soul. But not only the soul, the representative of the soul, the body, is just as holy. You know, right after the whole concept with Sara, the burial of Sara, Avraham Avinu says, okay, I'm young, I'm going old, I need to make sure my son has a shidduch, meeting the right woman. So he sends his messenger Eliezer to find a shidduch for his son. And he tells him, go here, don't go there, don't bring me girls from this nation. And then he says, there might be the option that I die till he comes back. So he makes him swear. I want you to swear to me that you're going to find a girl to my son from relatives, not from the Canaanites. And when he wants him to swear, what does he tell him? Sim yadcha tachat yerchi. Put your hand under my thigh. Why? Commentary says he told him, I want you to hold my circumcision. I know it might sound a little bit inappropriate, but I want you to hold where I circumcise myself and swear. Because when you swear, you have to hold a holy object. If you go now to a Beit Din and you need to swear, they give you a holy object to hold. Avraham Avinu couldn't find anything. He tells him, grab my milah, My circumcision, that's holy. That's holy. Yeah, that's a holy object. Because when I circumcise myself, I penetrated into the flesh, kedusha, holiness. The object, the physical object, became holy. Therefore, you hold the physical object and you swear to me. Avraham Avinu explains to us that when you take something physical and you penetrate into it something holy, the object becomes holy. If you're looking at a parchment of a Torah scroll, right? The Torah comes out of the ark, everybody kissing it, standing in its honor. You know that 2 months before that, it was an animal that lived in its own excrement and smelled and stinked and did moo, or another sound. Now it's the most holiest thing because it went through a transition, and with the right order was written holy words in it, and after it was completed was a ceremony and so forth. Now it's a holy object. You can't burn a Sefer Torah or throw it to the garbage. You have to bury it. Why? Because the object became holy. Because kedusha, holiness, penetrated into the object. So if this is the case, isn't my hand holy? Puts tefillin on every day? Isn't my legs holy because it runs to shul, it runs to do a mitzvah? My lips are holy. I praise the Master of the universe. I thank you. I hold myself from gossiping and lying. My eyes are holy. Every part of my body is holy because it participates in bringing Hashem into the world. Penetrating kedusha, holiness, into the world, into the body. So the body is holy. Not only the soul, the body itself is holy. Technically, you can start kissing bodies because they're holy. You know, I travel a lot, not lately, but I traveled a lot around the world, especially on tours. You know how many times I would go to different communities, different cultures, and it would be a normal thing. A woman hands out her hand. Nice to meet you. Sorry, I can't shake your hand. Now many women don't like that. What do you mean you can't shake my hand? One time, a certain individual who was an important lady, she didn't quite like that she took her hand out, and I said, I'm sorry, I can't shake your hand. Later on, I told her, I'm doing that from the utmost respect for you. It's not I don't disrespect you. And when she questioned why I couldn't shake her hand, I told her because you are very holy, and women are holy, and I can't touch something holy. Oh. But that's the reality. Later on, we engaged in a conversation, and she was questioning different things, and then she questioned why the women can't be with the men next to the Torah. Because I told her, because the Torah is the queen, right? And I said, women are also queens. Can two queens be in the same place? No, it's not appropriate. Ooh. Okay, my best friend. But that's the truth. That is the truth. A woman is malchut, it's a queen. She cannot stand next to another queen. It's not appropriate for the other queen. The Torah is malchut too. You know the great tzaddikim, there are many great tzaddikim. There's one of the rabbis from Belz, when he would have his audiences, he had a towel wrapped around his hand. He wouldn't touch people, he wouldn't have people touching his hand. There's actually a story that one time, it was I think in the 30s or the 40s, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was very young then, he wasn't the Rebbe yet, came to him to a meeting, and he shook his hand over the towel. And the Belzer Rebbe took the towel off and shaked his hand without the towel. Later on, he asked the Hasidim, who's this Avrech, who's this young student? They told him that's the son-in-law of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, because he was then not the Rebbe. It was the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe who was the Rebbe. He says, that's the son-in-law of the Lubavitcher. He says, yeah, I felt a warm hand. He took his towel off. So, the body is very, very holy. Even if you don't do much, it's very holy. Many people ask me when they have issues, I have a problem with anxiety, with fear, I can't fall asleep. Many things, people deal with a lot of things, emotionally, mentally. And my question is always the same question. Do you say Kriyat Shema al Amita? Do you say the bedtime Shema? What's the significance? Well, your body is a barrel of Kedusha. The Gemara, the Talmud gives a story that if you take a barrel and it's full of sand and you turn the barrel upside down, all the sand goes out, that's it. But if you take a barrel full of honey and you turn the barrel upside down and all the honey goes out, there's still going to be honey left on the walls of the barrel. And then will come all these maggots, jukim, whatever, cockroaches to get the remaining. The Gemara says the same thing. Your body is a barrel full of honey. And at night when the soul goes out, the body, like on the walls of the body, is left a little bit of honey, kedusha, some holiness from whatever you did that day. And all these spirits and mezikim and these entities, they come into the body to take the kedusha. And when the person comes back in the morning, the soul comes back in the morning, it stays in the body, and that will affect the person with all sorts of fears and anxieties and worrying and all sorts of mental issues. It's not that I'm inventing anything. Say Kriyat Shema al Amita, you'll sleep like a baby, you'll wake up like a baby, and you won't have any issues. Because your body is holy. It's enough that you did one mitzvah. You just smiled to another person. That's it. That's a mitzvah. If you penetrated Kedusha into the body is holy now. Therefore, the importance of the body is it's a holy object. It's a disgrace to the person not to bury the body. But it's not only that level, if I don't bury the body the right way, it signifies that there's no importance to that person's life. How would you want to be remembered in this world? Somebody sent me a picture. You know, there's a lot of problems with the Holocaust survivors here in Israel. They mistreat them in many different ways. Somebody sent me a picture with a tattoo on the hand, like a number, but it says, nobody's going to care, nobody's going to remember, how did it go? Nobody's going to remember me after I die, so what's the point? Something like that. Nobody cares. Something, it's just very deep meaning. You wouldn't you want to make some mark in the world? Wouldn't you want to leave something behind, some legacy, something that you did when you came to the world here? To eat donuts? Now you don't need to be a Moshe Rabbeinu, but you want to leave something after you. You want your life to have some type of a significance. What do you live your life for? You ask yourself, what do I live my life for? What, to pay the rent? To feed the body? I live my life to leave a mark behind that people can remember me, even if it's one person. My child, my neighbor, a person that I helped, it doesn't matter. Some people leave a mark behind them with millions and millions of followers and students. We're not these people. But your life has importance. If you die with not doing and leaving something in this world, what was your life for? You should ask yourself many times, yes, I serve the Master of the universe. I want to refine my neshama. These are all noble and great things. But one should have in their mind, what am I doing in this world? Am I leaving a mark in the world? Am I doing something positive in the world? When I die, what they're going to say after me? Each and every one of us, whether you accept it or not, or whether you're aware of it or not, have an importance in this world. Hashem created us completely different faces, different features. No identical individual in the world. Is Hashem telling us you are unique and you have a unique job in this world and a unique mission in this world and a unique purpose, and do it. And when you did it, whether you acknowledge or aware what you did or not, but you did something unique. Therefore, your life has value. Your memory, your actions, it all has value. Each and every one of us. And you need to know what your value is. And you need to go towards it and to say, I want to leave something behind. It doesn't have to be in a level of Avraham Avinu and millions of students and monuments all over my name. But even if you affect one person, even if you change one person's life, so much more so if you do much more, but your life has a certain value to it, that when the person dies and needs to get buried, the Torah says that person is very valuable. Avraham Avinu, when he came to bury Sara, he says, you know who's Sara? You know what she did in the world? Changed the world. She's greater than me. She deserves the best of the best of the best. So you have to understand that each and every one of us has the same value. Therefore, the burial is just as important. And if it's the complete opposite, chas v'shalom, then you desecrate and you misuse and you take the importance away from the body. You take the importance and the honor and the respect and the value. So when we learn something so deep and profound, you have to take the message that your life is valuable, your actions are profound, and you need to make your life worth something.